Yeah, guys. So there was some of the questions that they ask in the organization Quanzik, and that was based on the data modeling that today we'll be going to cover. And data modeling is very important part of our Power BI report development, because if your data modeling is not correct, you won't be able to represent your data correctly. Okay. A simple example that I want to give it to you guys, why data modeling is very important. Let me delete all this relationship. So currently I'm in at a Power BI desktop, and if you are see, I am in model view. So if I bring my cursor, this is my report view, this is table view, and this is model view. So currently I'm in model view, and if you are able to see, I have a dim client table, I have a dim calendar table, and I have some sales table and cost table, right? And if you are seeing, these tables are related by some relationship. I will explain what are these. Don't worry. Let me first delete this relationship. It was asked in the interview to create. So like what I will do. One way of deleting all this relationship is select and right click, and you will get an option to delete it in the new window, and you need to select delete. It is taking few time, and I hope so I will be able to delete it successfully. So see, uh, let me close the Power Query first. So what I will do, this is my Power Query. Let me click close and apply. There is some changes that is taking place. That is the relationship that I deleted it. So let it delete first. That has gone now. Let me close this Power Query. So I will do that. Now I will delete other relationships. So one way of deleting the relationship, to click on this line, right click, and you get an option to delete, and you need to select delete. It will give you the warning that whether you want to delete a relationship or not, and if you delete it, it will going to impact how the visual, how the data will be populate in the visual. Okay, so that will going to be get impacted. So this is one way of deleting. Other ways, to go to manage relationship tab, and there you need to select everything that there is a relationship between the cost table and the sales table, right? A relationship. So I want to delete everything. Delete everything. mm. Let me do that. Yeah, and let me select delete, and it will in few minutes it will going to delete. Yeah, so I don't have any relationship. What I will do, I will close it. See, there is all the tables are not related now, right? And if I go back to here into report view, what I will do, I have a table visual. So let me create a new page, right? Like if in the first page, what you are able to see, this is a table visual. If you are able to see, how I get to know that this is table visual or not, that if you go to this visualization pane, under this pane, if I select this visual, see, if I go to this a table visual, there is black circle that is surrounded by this, surrounded around this at the periphery of this table visual. So currently if I want to convert this visual to another visual like matrix, I can do that. You can select any other, but as of now it is a table visual. Now if you are able to see the table visual, right? If you I like and see, I have a client column, date column, sales column, cost column, and profit column. If you look at here, try to check, client column is calling coming from which table. So if I bring my cursor here, I will able to see that this client column has came from the dim underscore client table. So if you are able to see, this is dim underscore client table. This is the name of the table, and this column I'm using from this table. If I expand it, I will able to see I'm using client. Same way, if you your cursor here on the date, you will able to see that uh, you will be able to see that your date column is coming from dim calendar. So if you see your table dim calendar here, and see I'm using date column from this table. Now if you try to see sales value, this is I'm using from a measure table. And and this measure table, there was a measure with name sales, but I'm not able to see my measure table here. Here it is, measure table is here. And if you see, there is a sales measure that I have created, and that measure I have used. If you see, we have cost measure and then we have a profit measure. So I have three measures, one for cost, profit, and sales that I have created. These are very simple measures, right? And these are the tables that I have. If you try to see your data, if you see your client date, sales, cost, and profit, if you are able to see, notice the value. Although I am able to successfully able to create this table, I'm able to see the values also. But is the value is like, is there any uh, unusual behavior that this table is representing, whether the data that is coming into this visual is correct or not? Can anybody tell me? Like, did you notice any unusual behavior into this visual? Guys, have if you look closely into this visual, you will find that the sales for client A is 450. If you see the sales for the client A again on, like, first January 2023, the sales was 450. Again for the same client A, the sales on first of February 2023, the sales remain 450. Same for client B, C, all the clients, the sales remain 450. If you see the total also, the sales remains 450. Means by seeing this data, this cannot be correct. Although I'm able to create this table, but yeah, like, see, basically this total how it is coming, it is addition of 450 plus 450 plus 450. Ideally, it should be summation of all this value, right? But then also I'm getting 450 only. Also for each of the customer, for like, first January 2023 and first February 2023, even the sales are also same, cost is also same, profit is also same. So if you see this type of input or output in your visual, you should able to understand that there is some issues with your data modeling. You won't be able to understand that, like, if you see your measures, if you see your sales measure, what I'm doing calculate sum of सेल्स टेबल का सेल्स कॉलम का सम करके दो मुझे. This is what I am saying. So I have sales table, and there is sales column. So what I am asking, give me the sum of sales. This is simple measure. You will notice that why, like, my measure is correct. Although I have created the right visuals, I simply just drag and drop, but the value for all is 450. Ideally should not be there. If you come here, and if you go to this sales table, and try to see for the client A on 1st January 2023 the sales is only 50 but the value that I am saying is $450. For client A on 1st January 2023 I am able to see 450. It means whatever the data that I table have and the data that this graph or the table visual that I have created is not correct. It means there is some issues with my data model. Why there is issues? Because if you are able to see this client column I am using from which table? I'm using from client table, dim client table. I'm not using this client column from sales table. So if I create another table visual, see, yeah, that's what I'm showing it to you all. And if I use sales, I will have exactly correct value. And if I have date also, see, ideally I don't want all the hierarchy. I just want only the date. So I will right click here and I will choose date, not date hierarchy. Right. So I will having date. Let me format this visual. So I will copy the formatting from here and to there. Yeah. To save my time. Now, if you see the client is coming from which table? Now, for this table, the client is coming from sales table, date is also coming from sales table, and sales value that I want to present, this is coming from sales table only. Now, if you are able to see the data, the value that I am getting is exactly correct. For the client A on 1st January 2023, the sales is 50. If you go to this table view to see your data, exactly the value is 50. Means I am getting the correct value. If I remove this sum of sales and bring my measure that I have created, if you are able to see for sales, I am using, this is a sales table and I am doing the sum of this column. If I just, drag and drop it here, try to see, even though like I'm like using the same measure here also, if you are able to see this sales measure is exactly the same sales measure I'm using into this visual, same into the this visual, but here I am getting my correct data, but the data that I am getting here is not correct. Why? Because the value of the sales that we are able to see here is controlled by this column, client column, and this date column. See, if you are able to see this client column and this date column, these two column control the value of sales, right? Because if I remove this date column, now the value of sales changes. Now I'm getting 110, 150 and 190. Why I'm getting like this? If you go back here and try to see for the client A, we have two rows, one and row 2. If we sum up this value 50 plus 60, it is 110. Exactly what I am getting, 50 plus 60, that is 110. Now for the client B, if you are able to see, I am getting 70 plus 80, that goes to 150, and exactly I am getting 150. For the client C, I am getting 190. Why I am getting 190? Because 90 plus 100, that goes to 190, and that's why I am getting 190. So what you understand that whatever the value of the measure that you will get into the visual is controlled by this column. These are attributes. Attributes means property about the client, or in Tableau we call it dimension. So these are the dimension. Client is a dimension. So I have a client A, client B, and client C. I have a date as another dimension, or I can say date is another attribute of my sales. or I can say these are non measurable, attribute. These are non measurable attribute, these are measurable attribute. Measurable attribute, what is measurable attribute? Any attribute which you can sum up, you can find mean, max, you can find average. So that type of attribute is called, measurable attribute. Okay. So what I am saying, the value of measurable attribute will be controlled by other attribute. What is attribute? Attribute is a property of a client, or I can say any column that speaks something about the subject. What is a subject? Subject, here I'm talking into this table, I can say client is a subject. So it is talking about client. So for the client A, this is my sales on 1st January. For client A on 1st February 2023, this is my sales. And this is in Power BI, this is called row context. Why I'm saying row context? Because the value of each row will be, controlled by this column. You understand? It's something like grouping. So if you go here and, if I copy this table and bring it here, if I copy this table, right, let me convert this table into table data type here. Yeah. And if you group your data based on the client column, grouping means you should have unique record of your client. What it means, if you bring your client, so the client A will be appear once, client B will be appears once, and client C will be appear once. It means you will get one column as a client, and you will be having unique value of client. So you will be having A, you will be having B, and you will be having C. So these are the unique value of client name. None of the client name has appeared twice. All the client name are unique. So whenever, if you notice, whenever you whenever you drag and drop any column that is not measurable, right, into the table or into any visual of Power BI, it will going to group it. So see, I'm bringing this client column from the sales table. If you see your sales table, this sales table, this is my sales table. This sales table have my column client, and these value of the client are unique. So sorry, these are not unique, duplicate. So if you are see, client A has appeared twice, client B has appeared twice, client C has appeared twice. But when you drag and drop this column into this table visual, you will get client value, unique client value. So it means the table at the back end is filtering this column and only giving the distinct value or unique value of the client, or grouping based on client column. So we'll have only unique value of client. And when you bring your sales column, which is sum of sales, it will going to calculate value based on this column. So it will so if you go here for the client A, it will sum of these two values. So it will first going to apply the filter for the client A. These are the two row. It will going to sum of this value 50 plus 60, it will give us 110. Again for the client B, it will going to apply the filter, will have two row, it will sum of 70 plus 80, that is 150, and it will going to sum of these two value. Same thing for the client C, it will going to sum of this 90 plus 100, that is 190, and it will going to give us this value. And this is what happening, I'm exactly getting the same value. Yeah, please. Let's try to understand first. Let me complete. It is answering that the value of your measure will change with respect to the column that you are plotting here. See, so if I'm using client, it is grouping based on the client. If I use date column also and change it to date, now the value of my measure has changed. Now I'm getting 50, 60, 70, 80. So this value, the measurable quantity, is now depend upon these two non-measurable quantity or attribute. So like now the value of sales will decided by this client and date. So for the client A on 1st January 2023, what is the sales? That is 50. Now it means I am grouping my data based on these two column, client column and date column. So now the combination of client and date is unique, but if you see the client now, value of the client is duplicate. If you see the only the client A has appeared to us, but if you see the combination of client and date is unique. So client A on 1st January 2023, I have only one record, and that is 50. For the client A on 1st February 2023, I have only one record, that is 60, and so on. And if you add all this value, you are getting 150. Sorry, 450, not 150. So these are called row context. Why I'm saying row context? Because all these value change with respect to what is the like row, what are the each row combination have. So we have combination with client A and date 1st January 2023, I'm getting this value 50. If I change my row context, that is if I remove my date column, now the value has changes. So the value of a measure is first controlled by row context. Just remember. So let me put a note. Let me put it here. Controlled by row context. Right. Now if you are seeing all these value are not correct, like I'm getting 450, 450 for cost, I'm getting 105, and profit is I'm getting 345. Here I'm getting correct value because I'm using all these column, every columns from the same table only. So since I'm using all these three columns from the same table, that's why I'm getting correct value. But if you see this visual, all this column, if you see this client column has came from dim client table, this date column has come from dim calendar table, sales value has coming from sales table, the cost value is coming from cost table, and profit value, it is coming from if you see profit, it is sales minus cost, and that's what I'm getting. So each of the value are getting from different table, and all the table are not related. All the table are not related. So when the table are not related, you will be getting not the correct value. Then what I have to do, I have to relate the table. I have to relate the table. How we can relate the table? By creating relationship. We can create relationship. How we can create a relationship will be based on common column. So if you want to create some relationship, it will be based on common column. So let me write it: relationship, common column between the tables, right? Now, similar to, if you guys have studied, primary key and foreign key, I don't know whether you have studied or not, but people those who are from, a SQL background, they will be able to understand. Similar to what we have a relationship between the primary key and foreign key, same type of relationship, we can create into Power BI, into the data model, and that's controlled, the value that we are seeing into the visual. That's control value what we are seeing in the visual. Now, to create a relationship, let's first understand what are the different attribute that my different table have and how we can relate them. So if you are able to see the cost table, I have client as one of the column, and I have date column, and I have cost. So for the client A, on 1st January 2023, the cost is $5. For the same client A, on 1st of February 2023, the cost is $10, and so on. So this table contain information about cost. But if you are able to see, we have one column as client. Try to check whether this column is primary or not, whether it is a primary column or no, this is not a primary column. Why it does not act as a primary key or a primary key? Because we are able to see the value of the client is repeating, none of the value are unique. For primary, it should be unique value, and none of the value should be null. Try to check whether the date column can be a primary key. So if you are seeing, I have 1st January 2023. Again, if you see, I have 1st January 2023. So 1st January 2023 has a repeat twice. So date column also is not unique, so it cannot act as a primary key. Cost cannot be, so cost cannot be, because there we normally we do the aggregation of this column, this type of column. So you should not use this type of column to make a relationship. So any measurable column or measurable quantity cannot be used as a column to make a relationship like cost, where you are doing sum or finding average. Similar to sales, you cannot do that. Same way, if you are saying this column is also not unique, and even the date column is also not unique. So if you see, 1st January has appeared twice, 2nd February has appeared, sorry, 1st February has appeared twice. So like these two column, these two tables, type of table, if you see the table, these type of tables are called fact table. These type of table are called fact table. Why these table are called fact table? uh, Let me just tell you what is the how you will identify any table as a fact table. Yeah, how you will identify, what is a fact table. So normally, fact table is a transaction table, or you can see a transaction table that have measurable quantity. Why I'm saying a fact table is a transaction table? What do you mean by transaction? So suppose if you are on Flipkart, right, and if you are purchasing some product, right, if you are purchasing some product, means you are doing some transaction, so you have done these transactions, so that is called a transaction. So if you have buy something, that is called a transaction. These type of transaction, that activity that you are making on their website, that is on Flipkart, these are recorded in some database. Inside database we have a tables, and that table is called transaction table, right? So on Flipkart, if you are purchasing something, it means you are doing a transaction. These transactions are recorded into some database, and these are recorded in a table, and that table is called transaction table, right? That table is known as transaction table. So what is a fact table? A fact table is a transaction table that has measurable quantity. So why I'm calling this sales table and this cost table as a fact table? Because if you see this cost table, this cost table contain information about the client. What is the subject? My subject is client. And if you are able to see, I have client, I have date, and I have cost. So this information is all about cost that client has, has incurred. And for, if you see, for the client A, on 1st January 2023, the cost is 5. So if you see the cost column, since I can add this column, I can find this sum, and this sum makes some sense, because if try to sum of this client name, it does not make any sense. But if I am trying to sum up the cost, it will make some sense. So any column that is measurable and makes some sense is called, measurable quantity. So any transaction table that has, at least one measurable quantity, that transaction table is called fact table. So this is my fact table. Also, if you are able to see, this table contain information about sales, right? This table contain information about sales. This is my measurable quantity, and this sales information is about client A and that particular date. So this is also my fact table. There are other table that is called dimension table. So there are other table that is called dimension table. What are dimension table? Let me introduce. So there are other table that is called dimension table. These dimension table are also called master table. Or these table will not contain measurable attribute. So these table will not contain measurable attribute. And what is the other characteristics of this table? Is that, this will have other attribute that give description or more information, description about the transaction. What I mean by this, let's try to understand. So suppose what I'm saying, uh, this is my cost table, and I have client, A, B, C, and this particular date, these are the costs that this client has incurred. Now if you go to dim client table, it will have all the client information, like I have client A, B, and C. And if you are able to see, I have entry for all the client, none of the client will be left. So if you go to the fact table, I have client A, B, C. All the client information is here, A, B, C, and input. And at least it will have one column that are unique or a primary key. So if you see, I have only one column into this table, and this client column is unique column. So let me write that is one of the important feature, and it will have at least one primary key column. So at least one column that is primary key. So that is distinct value and not null. Other information that can be added to this table, like what are the address of this client, like when this client has joined to the organization, so date of joining and so on. So these type of information that this table should have. Why I'm calling this master table? Because this dim client should have entry of all the client. So I should have A, B, and C. All the client information should be there. Same, why I'm calling this dimension table as a calendar table. If you see, I have all the date. So if you go to this cost table, and if you try to see the date, so I have 1st January 2023, and this is 1st February 2023. Again it is 1st January 2003, 1st February 2. So like I have only two date, that is 1st January and 1st February. If you go to your sales table, here also I have only two date, that is 1st January and 1st February. So all these date will be available here in dim calendar table. So 1st January and 1st February is there. And all these, it have column, only one column, and that is unique column. So none of the value are null, and all the value are unique. It may have other column, like it may have other column, like I can have another other column, like I can have quarter column, like mm, I can have just one sec. Yeah, these are dim. If I'm saying dim table, this is dimension table only. So we can have quarter, and inside this I can put date. So this date is coming from dim calendar date. So I'm getting quarter on. Same way I can have a year and month and week, so on. There are other column that will give more information about date, but at least it will have one column that are unique and not null. That is, it has primary property. So, and it has all the date. So these two properties should be, any table, or if you are saying as a dimension table or a master table. So any table, if you are saying as a dimension or master table, it should have at least one primary key column, and it will not have any measurable attribute. So if you try to see your date table or dim calendar table, you cannot add quarter. You will able to add it, but you will get like no like insightful meaningful information, you won't get it. So if you add one and one, you will get two, but logically it will don't give you a meaningful information. But if you add cost, you will have some meaningful information. If you will add sales, you will have meaningful information. So that is called measurable attribute. So this dim calendar does not have any measurable attribute. This is dim client does not have any measurable attribute. So how you will identify any table as dimension table or master table? First of all, it will have all the information about that subject. Means if it is client, so it will have the name of all the client. If it is about the date or a calendar, it will have all the date. What is the second property? That it will have at least one column that are unique in nature, as well as not null, that is primary key column. And the third thing, it will not have any of the measurable attribute. Like date column cannot contain, sales or cost or something like that. If it is containing, means it is not dim calendar or a master table or a dimension table. If I'm saying dim, it is dimension table. So while understanding relationship, you should be able to identify which table I can consider as a fact table, which table I can consider as a master table. If you see in your fact table, only those client which are present in the dimension table will be available in the fact table. What I'm saying, if you go back here, if I go to client table, if I have a client A, B and C, I don't have a client D, then client D will not present in the any of my cost fact table. So the client D is not present here. If you go to your sales table, the client D is not present here. only those client Only those client will be present in the fact table if it is already available in the dimension table or master table. So I have A, B, C. So only these client should be available in the fact table, and that is called parent child relationship. Why I'm saying parent child relationship? Because if if father have some traits, only those traits will be passed on to son. So same way, if I am saying this table as a master table, if the master table have information about any client, only that, you know client information will be available in the fact table. Yes, if you are talking about in terms of SQL, yes it is. Now, so these are the important, because if you understand this, then only you will able to understand the relationship. So anybody have any doubt with respect to primary key and foreign key? Please ask. If it is not, will you able to identify what is fact table and dimension table? Say yes and no, guys. Fine. Now, so whenever you are creating a relationship, the relationship will be between the fact table and the dim table. The relationship will be between the fact table and the dim table. So this dimension table will be connected to your fact table. This dimension table may be connected with other fact table, that is sales table. Same way, my dim calendar table will be connected to cost, that is fact table, and the dimension table is able to connect it with fact table. There is one question: will my fact table will be connected with each other while creating modeling? No, ideally you should not connect to fact table. If you are creating, you are mistaken. You are making some mistake. Like if you are able to see Tribhuvan, see this cost table has a date column and this sales table has a date column. These are the common column. I can create a relationship between them. But ideally you will able to do that. But this type of relationship is not correct. This type of relationship is not correct. It will going to, you know, it will going to bring ambiguity into your data model. So the value, what is mean by ambiguity? The value that you will plot it here will not be correct. It may be correct sometimes, but not always correct. So that I don't want, because if I'm creating my data model, I should have full control on my data model. So what is the law that I told you? There is a relationship between the dimension table and fact table. One dimension table can have a relationship between one or more than one fact table, but two fact table cannot have relationship between them. You will be able to create it, but logically it is not correct, because it will going to increase or will going to introduce ambiguity in your data model. These are called data model. What is a data model? Data model is a group of your dimension table and fact table which are related with each other. Like, it means you can create a relationship between them. So if you are able to see this dimension table and this cost table have common column, that's it. Client is also here. You can create a relationship. How to create a relationship? Simply you just drag and drop it here. So you will get a new window with a new relationship, creating relationship between the dim client and cost table. And make sure that this is sticks, because I want to make this relationship active. If you are able to see this cardinality and cross filter direction, I will explain you later on what is this. Click on save, and there is a relationship between these two tables that has been created. Same way, the client is here also and client is here also. So I will create a relationship between these two. Now, if you are able to see, if you go back here, now the value has changed. So I'm getting 110 and 110 here, 150 and 150 here, 190 and 190 here. Why I'm getting this? See, for the client A, I'm getting 110. For the client B, 150. For the client C, I'm getting 190. Earlier, for all, it is 450. Earlier, for all, 105. Earlier, for all, 345. Now, since I make a relationship with the client and my this fact table, so if you are able to see, I have created a relationship with the client and this fact table, that is cost and sales. The value for the cost and sales is correct with respect to client, but since there is no relationship between the dim calendar and cost and sales, so the value of my cost and sales with respect to date is not correct. So if you are see, with respect to date, that is on 1st of Jan 2023 and 1st of Feb 2023, the value remain 110 and 110 for this client. So with respect to date is not correct, but with respect to client is correct, because I have a relationship between these two, but not with date. If I create a relationship, so I have a date column here also, I have date column here also. Let me create that. Just one sec. See, I have a cost and sorry, the relationship are on not correct, like between date and cost column. That is not correct, so I will change it. I will double click it here and I will choose date. So it should be between date and date. Let me click save. And see, the relationship are with a dotted line. These relationship are with continuous line. It means continuous lines means relationship are active. How I can check? See, if you click it here, make relationship active will be there. Make this relationship active, it is ticked. Click save. But for this, if you go here, make this relationship active is not checked, box is not checked, so I will do that. And soon it will change into continuous line. Same for this date and this date. Let me make a relationship. So between date and let me click save. Now, so I have a relationship between this dim table and fact table, dim table and fact table. If you go back here, now see the value are exact correct. For the client A, on 1st January 2023, the sales is 50. The same information it is also giving 50. For the client A, on 1st of February 2023, the sales is 60. This is also giving 60, and so on. Now, whatever the value that I'm able to see into this table is correct. So the value, the Power BI is not just just dragging and dropping and creating this graph, but the data modeling is very very important. So guys, that's all for the today. We'll continue our class on the data modeling tomorrow.